For part B, you're passing in an array of length n, right, from this code. And you're passing in also an integer, I, which is basically going to determine how many times you're going to iterate through this for loop, right? Because you're basically starting your iteration at I and until you go to n minus 1 and incrementing by 1 every iteration. And then here inside the for loop, you're doing constant amount of work, so that's not going to really factor in that much. And so basically, your runtime for this function is going to depend on what I is, right? So if you pass in I as 0, your for loop is going to be an iteration through all the elements in your array, whereas if you pass in I as, for example, n minus 1, then you're going to be doing a constant amount of work because you're just doing one iteration through the loop. And so your best case is when basically I is equal to n minus 1, right? So that will be, or as close to n as possible, and so that would be theta of 1. Whereas your worst case is going to be when I is equal to 0, in which case you're going to have a linear traversal. And the reason why I can specify small numbers for I like this is because my answer for the runtime of this question depends on n. It doesn't depend on I. So I don't have to assume that my I has to be as infinite as possible, right? I only have to assume that my array length is going to be approaching infinity.